Now we're here to talk about the responsibilities of scientists, which is an enormous topic. May I ask you how you view the responsibilities of the scientist? David first.
That's a great question. It's a difficult question. I would say the number one thing is you have the responsibility to your students and the people you work with, first and foremost. These are individuals who are coming to work for you. They care about you. They care about the research. And as a professor, your job is to help them grow as individuals, as scientists. How do you care about them? Second one, though, is the science you're doing and the impact that it's going to have on society. And that responsibility. And that responsibility is, in my opinion, it's important. It's still important that you're independent and you have to find your own path. And you don't necessarily do what maybe a government agency is telling you should do. You still have to find your own path, but that's important. But the third part, and for all of us, I mean, as Nobel Prize winners, I've found at least, I don't want to speak for everyone else, but you suddenly realize you are this person who is being asked to answer questions on a sort of larger scale about science, sometimes to be the defense lawyer for the field of science. But I think, at least for us, it's an opportunity from our perspectives, and we are all different, to be able to represent to all the people, not just the other scientists in the world, but to people in politics and people beyond, that what it is that we do and why it is important. Climate change, sustainability, these are all obvious ones, but there's other ones as well beyond that where we have to get those messages out as well.
Does that responsibility extend to all scientists? So, I mean, is everybody in the audience, for instance, who is a scientist an advocate for science, do you feel?
I mean, I personally hope they are, whether they are or not. But I think one of the things which is wonderful about science is that everyone gets to, in my opinion, take their own path, make their own way. They have to decide for themselves what is their relationship between what they think of their science and how they would explain this or be part of a bigger community. And everyone is going to do it differently. And it is that diversity of thought which is so critical to science anyway. So I think it always comes back to the individual. But I think collectively as a group, it's very important that we advocate for science.
Thank you very much. Serge, what about you? How do you view the responsibility of the scientist?
I would like first to come back to the responsibility to the students that we have, because we are often embarked in a very long-term project. We have a long-term goal, and the students, of course, have a shorter horizon. They have to get a PhD in a short time. In France, in principle, it's 3 years, which is too short, but let's say even 4 or 5 years is short. So we have to find for each student a part of the project which will make sense by itself and which will show to the student and make him or her feel that they are participating to a big adventure. So this is one point. We are ready to be able to separate the field in small areas which are significant. Now, with respect to the public, I agree with what you said. The first reaction I had when I heard that I had a Nobel Prize was to say, oh, now I will have to be the advocate of science everywhere, and not only what I am doing, but science in general, and find exactly what are the values of science which matter, how we can make policymakers and the society aware of that. And this is a very challenging task. It's challenging for one reason. Here, I think we all agree about what we are talking about. So we are preaching in front of people who agree, so which is very nice, very rewarding, but not so useful. In fact, we should have a room filled of policymakers, of bureaucrats, and explain to them why science is important.
But we're partly doing that this afternoon. Yes. So.
But then the risk is that they will nod and say, oh, hey, yes, you're right. And then after that, they will still do what they did all the time. And it's difficult. And now we live also in a time where we have very challenging issues, and science is the only possible answers to these issues, whether it's climate change, the search for alternative sources of energy, problems related to health and to pandemics and epidemics and problems raised with the environment and so on. And for this, science is the only possible answer. So science has a fantastic role to play. we have to understand also that, and this is what the policymakers are reminding us all the time, that we depend on taxpayers. So we have to explain to taxpayers why it's important to support science. And in my view, the most important reason to support science is not because it's useful, it's because it's part of civilization. I want just to quote a sentence which I think really summarizes very well. When the United States was involved in a super collider, building an accelerator which would cost a huge amount of money, one physicist had to reply was in front of a committee of the American Senate, and one senator asked, is this research relevant for the defense of the United States? And the guy, the scientist answered, no, sir, no, but it will make the United States worse defending.
Exactly.
So I think this is very, very.
This was Robert Wilson.
Yes.
Yeah, and he, interestingly, was a sculptor as well as a physicist.
Yes. So this dimension of science as part of culture is, I think, it's what makes our civilization worth living in and worth defending. But it's very difficult when you say that to politicians. Not the right way. I told one day I told to the French president, okay, what I need is what we need for all kind of research is 1 billion euro per year, and 1 billion euro is one espresso per month per French citizen. So it's not, and his answer is he laughed. Yes. Because of course people working in hospitals, in education, in police, in the judiciary system, asking for the same kind of amount of money, and it adds up. Sure. That's a big problem.
May-Britt, how the phrase "the responsibility of the scientist," what does it immediately evoke?
Yeah, no, so first of all, I would like to say thank you to David and Serge that you say what is important, that we scientists are scientists because we are there, we are talented to do science, and we should use our talents to be scientists. And then to be scientists, we work in groups with people, and then we should use our talents to care about our people so that they are helped to do beautiful science. So, and as I said, also I feel responsible for the animals and the questions that we ask in my lab. But it's such an important question, Adam, because I feel almost like people shoot at me about all these responsibilities that people want to give me. And especially as a Nobel laureate, you said you haven't traveled that much, May-Britt. No, I haven't. And the reason is that I know it is important to travel. I know it's extremely important to meet with people, both to enrich myself and hopefully enrich also some of the people that we meet. But every single day, I have to be honest with you, I have this discussion with myself. What is your responsibility today, May-Britt? Should you spend all your time today in the lab with the people discussing science, or should I answer a journalist, or should I go and talk to the politicians? Because in Norway we have only 5 million people in this huge country, Norway. So it's easy to get in touch with politicians, and it's so important, and it's so important for the world. And as I told in Rio, as a Nobel laureate, you are looked upon as an oracle, somebody who can give answers, like we do here. And should we give answers? Should we ask questions rather? And also, as I told in Rio, there are so many requests every single day. May-Britt, can you join this and this? But I'm so proud of saying yes, for example, to be the ambassador for science and education in Ukraine. They are in a big crisis, and even though then this is dragging me out of the lab when I deal with that, it's worth it. So I think to find what is worth it, what is my talent, what can I give to the world, and I send the question to you too. What is your talent? What can you enrich the world with? That is the question that we have to ask ourselves every single day.
Thank you. Serge?
Yeah, I think this gave me the idea that there is some other thing which is very important in our responsibility, which is the transmission of knowledge from one generation to the next. And I think teaching is very important in this respect. I have been teaching during my whole career, and one of the big joy I feel is when someone which I don't know comes back to me and says, I attended your lectures and I took some benefit from it. I think this transmission is essential. It's a transmission throughout history. We are transmitting the knowledge which has accumulated from the past and which leads into the future. And this might be the biggest responsibility we have as scientists, to know that we are part of a chain extending from the 17th century to today and maybe later on. And we have to defend the values of rationality, the values of the Enlightenment, which is what we are for.
Can I say something
Yeah,
more?
please.
Because I'm so inspired by Serge and David here.
This is what this is for. This is for you to talk to each other.
Yeah. No, so since I see so many people here, then I'm talking about all your talents. Not only your talents, but remember, your interest in science make you perfect ambassadors for telling about science outside your close relationships. And if everyone here would do that, it helps democracy in the whole world. And if I'm allowed, since I'm speaking, I'm very talkative, I'm sorry for that. If I'm allowed to cite a singer in Norway, she's singing for children, and she has the name as me. She's called May-Britt Andersen, and she was singing this beautiful song that our Earth is like a balloon, and if there is somebody in Norway, in Brazil, or wherever, putting a needle into this balloon, it all becomes flat. So we should keep together this balloon up, floating, so that the world is not collapsing. And scientists, we have more responsibility than other people because we know a lot.
Do you want to jump in? Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, I was just wondering, I was just thinking about, what are our responsibilities and the other aspects of it. I mean, the other responsibility, I think, to society is, and while I care enormously about communication, and we have to be able to communicate better to society, and we can talk about that too, but the other part is, I think for scientists, we have to invent the modern world. We have to keep inventing. That's what we do, right? And if we were waiting for other people to tell us what to do, I think we would be in trouble. Now, that doesn't mean to say that we're all sitting around in groups saying, okay, what's the modern world going to look like? We don't do that. But what we do is we have this responsibility to keep thinking about what do we want to do better? How do we want to do it better? And how do we start to think about, and that's literally what scientists have always, I think, been doing, but it continues to be important, and it's only going to get more and more important as we move forward. It kind of goes back to Serge's point about civilization, and I do think that is probably one of our biggest responsibilities, is to continue to think about what we want tomorrow to look like. I think that's really important.
Thank you very much. This is a conversation, and we can't hear from most of you in the audience, but you can hear from each other. So what I'd like to do is to just put the conversation to you for a minute. And if you wouldn't mind, for the next couple of minutes, turn to your neighbour and take 1 minute to tell your neighbour what you think the most important responsibilities should be for scientists. Whether you're a scientist or non-scientist, what do you think they should be? And then your neighbour could take the minute to tell you the same thing. If you don't want to do that, you can take 2 minutes and just check your phone. It's fine. But anyway, we're going to talk to each other. Turn our microphones off. You've got 2 minutes. Please talk to each other about what responsibilities you have, and then I'll take some ideas from the audience, a few. So please, 2 minutes.
So the remit is again.
Well, they have to talk about what they think the most important. Great, yes. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Sorry to stop you. I can't tell you how lovely it is to listen from stage to the bubble of your conversation. Thank you very much for doing that. And sorry to interrupt. Right, I'm just going to go straight to you. If you had something to add, some new responsibilities to throw into the conversation that we haven't been talking about, and you think are urgent, please raise. There's 2 hands raised here, and over here, there's one here. So can we get some microphones there? And let's be quick. So, thank you. Yes, I'm afraid. Sorry, I've given you a task. Yes, okay. You go first, please. Here. Yes, please.
Yeah. Is there anyone who? Okay, so it's me. The question I want to do to you three is. Do you feel that in your area there is a big gap between people who are working in more theoretical branches and the ones who are working in more experiment? For instance, in physics, do you think there is a big gap between a string theorist, for instance, or is he or should he be working more close to experiment?
It's a beautiful question. Thank you. Let's answer it very quickly and then get to the responsibilities. In physics, for instance, Serge, is there too big a gap between theoretical and experimental physics? Quick answer.
No, it depends on what kind of physics. If it's high energy physics, I would say there is a gap because they are trying to find out the fundamental laws of nature, which involve now a lot of mathematics, a lot of very specialized math, and the experiment involve a lot of technology, so there is a gap. But in the low energy physics, condensed matter physics or atomic physics, we are lucky enough that in small groups we can have expertise in experiments and in theory, and we can rely on colleagues who are rather close to us. So I think the gap is less important. But
Yes, in neuroscience, it's a big question.
Yes.
Theoretical neuroscience.
Yeah,
experiment.
just a small
Very quick-
comment. Can I comment
Yes.
on it? So the gap is decreasing in neuroscience because we need people with mathematics skills and physics. So then what we need is people who can communicate so that we can understand each other.
Thank you. On responsibility.
Hi,
Yes.
good morning, you all. Thank you very much for the lectures. I'm Glaucia Virina from Faculty of Medicine. Well, I have an open question. How can we bring science closer to society, to the masses, since that we have the fake news scenarios and challenges in our way? Thank you very much.
Well, I'm sticking to my centre on responsibility. So how do we match up how do we meet our responsibility to bring science closer to society?
So I personally think it's straightforward. It's a straightforward answer. It's not a straightforward execution. It's communication. The communication is the problem, is the fact that science comes across as complicated and therefore distant for general public. The question is, what does the general public care about? They care about being entertained, they care about being interested, they care about being curious, and they get that from other directions. As communicators, as scientists, if we can achieve the same thing, we can make the general public excited about science. Carl Sagan in the 1970s, the 1980s in the US and Europe was amazing at bringing science and physics to the general public, and it worked incredibly well. We have to be able to think about ways to communicate what we're doing in a way that excites the general public, in a way that other things already excite the general public.
What about those who don't want to be communicated to, though, who just distrust science? Is transparency important, for instance? I mean, how do we...
I mean, transparency is, to my opinion, you can't be a scientist without being transparent. And it's basically impossible. You're not a scientist if you're not transparent. The trust part that goes back to skepticism, this business about people who are putting out information about scientists as being untrustworthy or skepticism, that's fulfilling an agenda what those people want to achieve. And the problem is it's going out there in a format that makes it easy for many people to believe that this is the truth. This business about getting back to the truth, which you said when we were sitting here, is absolutely critical. How do we develop ways as a society through social media and other things to understand what is an achievable truth? And I mean by achievable truth, where there's a general consensus around what the truth is, and we don't believe there's a political stake associated with just knowledge and truth. That is something that has to be critical as we move forward.
Thank you. Serge, you want to...
Yeah, I think one has to convey to society that truth is building in a kind of complicated but well-organized process. Truth is based on the comparison to observe things and then to build up theories to try to explain these things, and then to test the theories again with what happens in nature by other new experiments. So it's a constant exchange between facts, not fake news, but real facts which everyone can observe, theories, and then testing the theories. And that a theory is not something arbitrary, it's not an ideology, it's not something that is equal to any other statement you can do. So we have to fight against relativism, which is not the physics theory of relativity, but a kind of perverse relativism, which amounts to say that any truth, anything that you can say is as valid as any other one. And it's very pernicious. You have some people, even in the academic world, who claim that the scientific theories are social facts, that they are built up and that they just depend upon what happened in society. And this is very, very wrong. And we have to fight for that, but it's difficult because this is possible if you talk to people who have had a good education, an education in the possibility of recognizing free thinking, thinking for itself, critical mind and critical thought. And again, we come back to enlightenment. We come back to basic facts, basic ideas which were developed in the 18th century in Europe and which should prevail. And now what is sad is that we have a lot of resistance against that, which is building up, and we have to fight against that. And this is true also in politics. And Condorcet, which I quoted in Rio a few days ago, was a mathematician who developed, we had a treatise on education in which he explains that. And he explains that the only way to fight against populists, against charlatans, is to be able to develop free thinking. And I just want to add something about the fact that he had also a theory about the way to vote. And he said he developed a strategy, a rule for voting, saying you don't have to vote for one person. This is ready for populism, but you have to vote for lists. And the one you prefer down. And then what you do is that you eliminate the one for which everybody is against, and then you go up, you vote again and again, and this way you will vote someone who will be the right person. And no country is applying this rule.
There's an economics laureate, Eric Maskin,
Yes.
who is very keen on this, on
Yes.
changing voting behaviour. But yes, it's
Yeah.
very hard. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, we've got so many hands up. Please, very quick points. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Giselle. I'm a writer and novelist, and I write about ecological stuff. And Dr. David said about the coolest thing in the world would be capturing carbon from the atmosphere. And I would like to know how science can help to not only solve the problems, but prevent, considering our different cosmovision, like Brazilian indigenous people, and how can we work together to prevent this problem? Thank you very much.
So, I mean, basically, how do we prevent as opposed to actually capture thereafter? There's an enormous, so if you look at what's happening right now in renewables is incredible. And going, with the way that we're slowing down, the way that we're preventing, the way that we're creating problems with energy is remarkable right now. Renewables are really taking on a life of their own that we have never seen before. But again, we're doing a terrible job of explaining to the world that this is actually happening right now. It's fantastic, which is actually happening, which is really, really great. But the second part of that is, but you have to invent. And science is about observation and discovery, but it's also about invention. Some people call that engineering, but that's also, I believe it's also science. But that invention, for example, if you could take molecules like methane, and using sunlight, you could actually convert it into kerosene for airline fuel. You're never going to change using fossil fuels for the airline business. No one's ever going to use electricity for that. But you have to come up with ways of massively reducing the amount of energy that goes into getting your hands on those fuels. And you can literally think about doing that using the sunlight in the sky. So that is going to be one way for prevention of using up all that energy to allow our modern world to exist.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Please.
Thank you for this opportunity to talk here. I have a question that is regarding more about ethics in our research environment, because we are discussing here how we have this immense pressure to publish, because if we don't publish, we don't get funding. But we also have to leverage that we have to publish results that are highly reproducible. So I have heard reports from other people just completely fabricating their results because, if we don't have this result, we won't get funding, and if we don't get funding, we won't be able to do any more science. So how you three as Nobel laureates do this balance between publishing and getting funding, and to also ascertain that your result is a real result? Thank you.
Once again, publication is a topic that comes up with every audience of young scientists. It's so important that something's gone wrong with the system. Quick comments on, please, from all of you on this question of quality versus quantity and the publication system generally. Who wants to go first?
I can go really fast.
Go on then.
In chemistry, in organic chemistry, it's easy because everyone's going to use that chemical reaction the following week. So if it was fake, you would be out of a job within 10 days. Really, really easy in chemistry.
And what about high level
Publications
versus?
So I would say the high level versus the low level, you do your best and you call it great, right? So you do what you think is the coolest thing and you send it to the journal that you believe that it should be in, And then you sit back and wait and see what happens. But you cannot force that. You cannot end up in a great journal just because you want it. But if you keep going after the things that you genuinely think are important, you will continually end up being in good publication environment. It will happen to you, but you can't just get it for wanting it. It has to be based on how good the actual science is.
Thank you. May-Britt.
Oh, I waited for you.
Serge first.
I think the issue of ranking of citation index and ranking of publications is very perverse in science. There is a strong pressure to publish, especially for young, ambitious students who want to get a good postdoc position, to have paper published in Science or Nature. But we have to understand that the publishers are not scientists by themselves, and very often they are they create some fashion, and there are some fields which become fashionable, and they push these fields, and so it becomes an advantage to publish in these journals. And I think this is bad, and I think people should, young people should be evaluated not through the quantity of the citation index, but through qualitative judgment, which is much more difficult. There are some countries in which this has reached very caricatural attitude. For example, in China, some students at some point were receiving extra money if they published in a paper like that. And I think they are going back now and not applying these rules anymore. But it's
well,
very.
But Serge, there have been these excesses, but wherever we have this conversation, exactly as you say, there needs to be a change to the system, yes. But nobody ever has a solution. It's the system is as it is, and it's very difficult to see how that reward system can change and people can avoid just going down the same track as the generation before, that it's all that promotion and everything else is dependent on getting these high-profile publications. And I guess it's of concern to the majority of the audience that they're thinking, how are they going to cement these? Do you have any? Does anyone have any suggestion for change?
I think it's right. It's very difficult to change. In my group, my personal experience that I feel the pressure for the young people to publish in these journals. I don't want to do it, but in the end, I accept this idea because I don't need it anymore, but they need it. So it would be very selfish not to do it. So we have to play the game, and I think it's one of the very bad aspects of the fact that our lives are now controlled by computers. In fact, this ranking thing was impossible 40 years ago. Nobody knew how many people were reading or pretending to have read our papers, and I think it was much better. So
thank you.
I don't know how to fight against that, but I know that the universities at the top of the best universities are trying, when they hire people, not to use this criterion as a main criterion, but they try to make a kind of qualitative assessment of the quality of the people they have.
Thank you very much. May-Britt, very quickly, and then I want to come to this question.
No, so I started out by saying that the slogan at our institute is to do excellent science. And I think that is extremely important, that we strive to address important questions. And it's difficult because sometimes it is very difficult to get funding for science, even in Norway. But if we think about it, that there are some questions that are so important that we address them, that we put all our resources into that. So that's one thing. And then the second thing, I would like to defend these beautiful journals like Nature, Cell, and Science, and so on, because the way we use these journals is that we send our stories to these journals, and we get extremely good feedback back, and we spend 1 year or so to write the manuscript in such a way that is a really, really solid story. So when we have such stories that we feel we could send them to Nature and Science, we get a lot of help back too. So it's not only to be decorated, because I think if we have the urge to be decorated in science, we shouldn't do science. We should do science because there are important questions to be addressed.
Thank you. Please.
Hi. Maybe you have no idea about money in research in Brazil. It's extremely low. I have worked in all countries, in all continents, and I can say that we do not do science, we do miracles here. So I'm gonna make a short question to each one. Let's suppose that we have an important disease and we have 2 projects, and you are called as Nobel Prize to decide which project you would fund. One would be a traditional way that had a high possibility of giving some good result. And the other one had a very low possibility, but it was very creative and maybe could change innovation in medicine. Which project, and there was no way, you had to choose one or another one. Which one would you decide to give the money to?
I would choose to no longer be a Nobel Prize winner.
Okay. Do you want to answer the question? It's for each of you. Very quick, like tiny answer. Which would you fund?
No, so we've been in committees where we have such questions, and then I would fund the one that I was sure was a high risk but a high gain project.
Serge?
Yeah, it's difficult to respond in the abstract way without knowing what are the project, but I agree with what May-Britt said. If there is a chance that the high-risk project gives a fantastically important answer, then I would favor it. But the ideal thing is to be able to fund both kind of projects which are useful.
Thank you all three very much indeed.
Here, please. Up here. Up here.
Up here. Okay, go on. You've made it. Well done. Yes, please, quickly then. I'm running out of time, so very quick.
Thank you. Eu sou Isabel, eu estive no Rio de Janeiro, eu estou aqui mais uma vez. Muito obrigada pelas falas inspiradoras de vocês. Serge, essa questão da limitação das normas, eu falei isso numa conferência da Unesco que eu participei, e eu fiquei muito feliz de ouvir você falando sobre isso, porque eu penso que a arte e a ciência, elas podem caminhar juntas, e elas são necessárias para que a gente desenvolva a investigação e a pesquisa. E as minhas aulas de neuroeducação perceptiva, eu ajudo estudantes e professores a desenvolverem toda essa criatividade através das artes, através das ciências humanas e sociais. E uma pergunta que eu gostaria de deixar aqui é como que até provocativa e reflexiva, como que o diálogo Nobel, os próximos, podem ser mais participativos com os jovens cientistas, e não só os jovens, os cientistas que estão aqui, inclusive os cientistas que não estão nas universidades como eu, porque através das minhas aulas eu descobri como identificar pessoas com transtorno de déficit de atenção e hiperatividade em apenas 5 minutos. E May, você é uma inspiração para mim, porque eu faço isso através da educação dos sentidos. E muito obrigada a todos.
Thank you very much indeed. It was there's a lot to summarize. Anyone want my job? The lady works with art and science, working with groups of young people, teaching creativity, nurturing people, and also being able to identify problems that young people have. And she was mentioning the idea of having young people involved in our dialogues and how important it is to have that. And indeed, we did have that. We did have lovely conversations in Rio de Janeiro just 2 days ago on Monday, where Serge and May-Britt and David were talking to young people. But synthesizing a question out of it, and we're out of time, I suppose I'm going to stick to the art and science bit and also come back to creativity and give you like 15 seconds each, just to summarize. How do you view creativity in science? How important is it? Is there a connection with art? I know there's a lot there, but can you say something really, really brief to finish off? So, Serge, you're on the hot spot. Go for it.
No, I think as creativity is very hard to define, especially because it's different in art and in science. In art, creativity allows you to imagine everything. You have a work of, you can imagine a new way of painting, a new way of writing. A science fiction writer can imagine anything, going faster than the velocity of light to other stars and planets. In science, we are restricted by reality. We are talking with nature, and so we cannot imagine anything. In fact, we are discovering things which exist beyond us, and so creativity is more in the way you are able to build tools which allow you to explore nature. And a lot of creativity comes from that, either because you are able to relate different aspects of reality in new ways, or because you invent new tools which allow you to explore nature. For example, in the 17th century, when the telescope was invented, when the pendulum, when the pendulum clock was invented, these were creative tools which made the modern science revolution possible. So this is creativity in science as opposed to in art.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. May-Britt.
So I think creativity is extremely important in science, and by having an artistic mind, as you say, Serge, with imagination, you can use the diversity in your group to imagine something that you didn't understand before. So I think art and science go hand in hand.
Thank you.
I would just add that creativity is an amazing term, right? It covers so many different things. I think from a scientist, the creativity is the component of how do you think differently, or how do you introduce new ways of thinking, which is so critical for everything that we do in science, all the way down to problem solving and being able to see solutions that other people cannot see by connecting things which at first seem very disparate, but ultimately can be connected. The one thing I'll leave you with, which might be different from how other people think, I don't know, but I do think that creativity can be taught as opposed to being inherent. And I do think that people, given an opportunity to be taught, can become extremely creative, and I think that's really, really important for science.
And back to the point that this lady was making and was made earlier, that presumably it's a great thing for science if more diverse views can be brought in, adding creativity from all sorts of different angles. I know there are so many questions, there are still hands up, but my clock says minus, minus, minus. And I know that we have another event to get to, so we have to rush. And I'm just so sorry that we can't take all the points. I'd love to know what responsibilities got discussed that we've missed. There must be many. But anyway, for the
Preparedness.
Preparedness.
Preparedness and sustainability.
2 words for the next dialogue: preparedness and sustainability. Let's have one on that. Good. I just wanted to thank our 3 laureates, and I want to turn it and thank you, the audience. And I also wanted to thank, the technical team who put all this beautiful thing together. It's really an enormous effort has gone in from so many people, so thank you. And I'd like to turn the stage over now to Helen and Nada from ABC just to give the closing remarks. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Adam, thank you so much. I'm too emotional. I have been crying down there, really, because it's a dream. We made it. And we made it thanks to May-Britt, to Serge. Sorry, I'm really getting old. It's terrible. Really, it's
She's just crying.
it's a dream
You're
that
just crying.
we started several years ago. Then the pandemics came, and we couldn't make it. Then we had a terrible lack of democracy. Don't forget, science, you need democracy in order to have the freedom to do the creation. So we're going to go home with several thoughts. And each one of you, young generation that is sitting here, have a responsibility, because you're going to be ambassadors for the ones that weren't able to be here and transmit. And we as Brazilians have a responsibility, because we are the privileged ones. We are the ones that have gone to education, were able to get to university. We are professors, most of us here in public schools, and we need to do our part, as they said. And each one is going to find a way of doing. It's not going to be the way May-Britt did, or Serge, or David, but each one of you will be able to change the world. We need to believe in that. So I want to thank again the Swedish embassy that I forgot in the beginning. The ambassador, she was with us all this time. I want to thank FAPESP, Zago is sitting here, and in his name, everyone. I want to thank University of São Paulo, all the staff, all the provosts, and all the students, the other universities that did collaborate in this. University of the Estado do Rio de Janeiro, UERJ, as well as Finep, and who else gave Klabin, and all the other sponsors. It's a long list, but I think they did it right, because we accomplished what we wanted. Thank you so much, and thank you for really believing in Brazil and the Brazilian Academy of Science, that we promised we would deliver something, and I hope we delivered right.
You did, but I thought you were crying at the memory of 5 years of working with us to get this organized.
It was fantastic. We got to know so many fantastic people, and he's always challenging me. We did the first online with all states from Brazil and the federal district. Was a success, and then Adam said, we need to do something else. And I said, well, nowadays it's impossible. So we moved to Latin America and the Caribbean. Now we have this going on, and he's already planning another, I don't know what, that we are going to have here. So to each one of you, again, thank you so much. And to everybody that came from Sweden and all our staff from the Brazilian Academy of Science, thank you so much. Without you people, this would be impossible, even with the funding. So believe in yourselves. Thank you so much. Professor. Thank you, David.